Jill Biden's comms guy. Really sweet man, but like, you know, a liberal through and through. And he would come on and his job was like to defend the Bidens, and he would do his job. And I think it was named Michael De La Rosa. And the audience would eat him up. And I personally love to have him on because sometimes with the me and Robbie dynamic, people would start to forget that I was not a lib. Like they want to make me into a lib. And when they
need a dichotomy. They can't handle anything spectrum. They don't understand a spectrum.
Yes. And I need a foil, because if they just see me as being anti-Robbie, then they see me as a lib. But if they see me and suddenly going back and forth with Michael De La Rosa, because Robbie has very little to say to him, right? I'm angrier at him because I'm focused on the Democratic Party because they're the only, you know, they ostensibly are supposed to be representing the interests of the left. And so then the audience gets really keyed in, and it heightens the contradictions, and it makes them realize that there is, like, excuse the verbiage, but a third way.
I think
there's another path.
And we did this on our channel a week ago, where first we had Medea come on, and then we had Daniel McAdams, who's the director of the Ron Paul Institute, who does a podcast with Ron on the regular. And we linked the two of them up because they are adamant about what's going on in Gaza has to end. So I'm thinking, great. These are the types of connections that need to be made on the regular.
Yeah, you don't have to agree on everything. Look, if they're anti-war, that's the priority. Yeah. We can talk about my reproductive situation, but we have to stop killing kids in Gaza, right? Like we have to come together with what we do agree on. And that is somewhere where the libs just can't handle it. They have like these purity tests.
Right.
But whatever the reason is that, you know, Candace Owens has decided that she will go without reservation.
Oh, Candace.
On the side of Palestine, you know, even though I'm sure as we did, listen to her podcast when she was on Rogan, you know, a few years back. And when he just so slightly pushed her on the question of whether or not humans have any effect on the climate. And she gives the Turning Point USA, Koch brothers talking point, if there ever was one. Okay, whatever. But if she's going to give the right answer on a genocide, then that's somebody who has at least 1 million followers who she does have influence over. And they really love her. So if she's going to continue to say that.
That's the thing. Then that's my ally in this particular thing.
Yeah, you know, she had me on when I was fired because she, you know, had just gone through something similar.
Yeah.
And there was some debate about whether or not I should go. And that was basically how I felt. Like, you know, to the extent that there were these little moments where she brought other issues into the conversation and tried to go off on Black Lives Matter and stuff. And I was like, look, like, I think it's useful for us to talk about this discrete issue. If you want to come on my show or talk again later about some of this other stuff, I'm happy to, but let's focus up. Like,
yeah.
And you see, I mean, the fact that she was pushed out of, what do you call it? I always confuse the name.
Daily Caller,
Daily Wire. I always get them mixed up.
Or it's the Daily Wire. I'm sorry.
Oh, see, I don't know. One of them daily shows. The fact that she was literally pushed off and then still embroiled in these like knockdown, drag out fisticuffs. Same with, who's the Jewish comedian they also hate, the dark-haired guy who's anti-Zionist and like people are very mad at him all the time. You know what I'm talking about.
Dave Smith?
Is it Dave Smith?
Well, Dave Smith was just on with Rogan. As a matter of fact, if you want to, I don't even know if you've seen this clip, but I wanted to put up there. So
yeah, it's Dave Smith.
So Dave Smith went on with Joe Rogan over the weekend. And this is what he had to say about what's going on right now.
What does Israel have on our country? I think suppression of people's ability to talk about very polarizing topics like Gaza, suppression of that is a cause of anti-Semitism. Because people start thinking, like, is there some sort of grand plan to control us and keep me from being able to talk about something that clearly is in the news every day? It seems like a big issue.
Yeah. Well, maybe we shouldn't have a system where, like, our political class is not allowed to criticize a foreign government. And a foreign government that's gotten us into like 7 wars. Benjamin Netanyahu is John McCain.
Right.
Like he's been telling us Iran has a nuke. He's been telling us they're 5 years away from a nuke since I was 7. Literally, he's been saying Iran is 5 years away from a nuke the entire time. And he came over here, he testified before Congress in 2002 that as a regional expert, that if we were to overthrow Saddam Hussein, democracy would sweep the region and there'd be all these positive reverberations. And then he goes, and you also got to overthrow the regime in Iran, and you also got to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. And like every single one of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's right.
I mean, like, I can't, like, again, given all that I was saying pessimistically earlier on about like how we don't have the media, we don't have the military, like you gotta take these open, like if this comedian, I don't know what else he believes, to be honest. He's like, I guess right-leaning, whatever. All I see him is tweeting about pro-Palestine stuff all day. So, and if he wants to go on the biggest podcast in the world, the biggest media outlet in the country, I won't say the world, in the country, and say that,
exactly.
God bless. Also, I saw Tucker Carlson. I saw Trita Parsi from the Quincy Institute, who I have a lot of respect for, who used to come on Rising all the time and give his analysis on the Middle East. He had retweeted something that Tucker Carlson just said on his show about his analysis of Iran being spot on. I think he used the word spot on. And it's like, yeah, I'll take the win. Now, do I think that we should like make it clear where we agree and where we disagree and not be overly broad and say like, oh, Tucker Carlson's great now? Yes, I do think that. But yes, if some of the biggest voices in the world and the only, we're talking about checks and balances, maybe one of the only checks and balances that persists are the idea that some really, really popular right figure like Tucker Carlson, who's independent now because he was made independent. Candace Owens was made independent in the way that I was made to be independent. Well, now you don't even have any way to coerce us. You know, with being on Rising was a little bit of a tightrope. Okay, well, now we're all free. And if people who have much bigger platforms than mine want to say the right thing and mixed in with the bad stuff, God bless.
That's how I feel. I'll go on. And I've gone on. I went on the Michael Knowles show. I went on with him.
Oh, yeah? How was that?
It was fine. I mean, look, I was there for a very particular segment and they were all very excited to have a Democrat willing to say shit about Joe Biden. And quite honestly, whatever it was at the time, it was worthy of shit talk.
Yeah.
And for me, it was also a matter of fundraising and just being present.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It is what it is. But my message was still my message. It doesn't.
It's substantive.
100%.
You know, that's really what it comes down to. And as I'm sure you've pointed out as well, you know, Katie talks about it all the time. Jen does all the time. The Zionist movement is going to destroy itself because they are incapable of reading the room.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I mean, I've known of Sam Harris for a long time. I didn't realize his mother invented the Golden Girls. That explains a lot.
I did see that tweet. I didn't know that either.
No, you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
But, you know, very funny show. Betty White's an all-timer.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that his response, because they just can't help it. And we're going to get to, you're going to get an
Sam Harris is a huge Islamophobe. Like he is not.
Well, if you remember, it was Sam Harris that was on with Bill Maher at the time that Ben Affleck went on there and said, you guys are being Islamophobes. And Bill Maher being like, you don't know what you're talking about. And Sam Harris is sitting there
another one.
Shit. So Sam Harris can't help himself with Dave Smith going on with Rogan and Dave Smith saying what he said regarding the Zionist state. So this is what Sam Harris had to say. I think this was yesterday.
A genuinely good guy who wants good things for people, but he is honestly in over his head on so many topics of great consequence. Right? When he brings someone on to just shoot the shit about, you know, how the Holocaust is not what you think it was, right? And you know, maybe Churchill's the bad guy in World War II.
Was that Tucker?
Or he's got Dave Smith, you know, being treated as an expert on Israel and Palestine and the history of that conflict and the moral emergency that came to the world's attention on October 7th, and what is appropriate to think in the aftermath of all of that. Right? Dave Smith is the only reason why anyone knows what Dave Smith thinks about any of this is very likely because Joe had him on multiple times to talk about it. Right?
That's the point.
He's a pure misinformation artist, and you know, on top of many others. And when Joe talks to someone like Trump or Tucker Carlson or you know, any of these other guys who lie as freely as they breathe and doesn't push back against any of their lies. In fact, in Trump's case, really fairly energetically helped put his lies into the most plausible possible shape. it is irresponsible. I mean, it is directly harmful. Our society is as politically shattered as it is.
All right. Well, how much more do we have
because
to
of how Joe
I'm like saying, like,
has
not only is
interacted
he
with
wrong,
information.
but the media personality.
Again, I don't think this is. I think a lot of this is inadvertent.
Can we got to be done with Sam. What bothers me about it is there was a point, and for me, growing up, always I've been an atheist, and that is something that it was much more acceptable to be Jewish before it was acceptable to be an atheist in a lot of places. Like I can't, it was always, and I'm not saying I was like persecuted, but when I came across people, like the Four Horsemen, and I'm sitting here with a poster of Hitch because that's one of like the people that I always really like. It bothers me immensely that Sam Harris was in that group. Like, I feel like he is not worthy of being in that group.